Welcome into live post-game. Oh, there we go. Welcome into live post-game coverage of the 2026 Winter Games. I'm Tyler Yaremchuk. We are streaming live on the Daily Face-Off YouTube, as we will be for every single one of Canada's games here out in Milan. And today it was game 2 for the Canadian group, and it was win number 2 for the Canadian group as well. And really a very similar story to the win we saw yesterday against Czechia. Full breakdown coming your way over the next 30-45 minutes here. I'll be joined by Dan Riccio, our friend from Off the Roster, in a few minutes. We'll get his take on a handful of storylines, and of course, looking for your comments over in the YouTube chat. Of course, the one first comment in from Amanda, rough to have that injury at that point in the game. Number 12 says, I feel so bad for Kevin Fiala. Hope he's okay. Yeah, speculating obviously on the broadcast already. I mean, an injury like that being stretchered off the ice with what looked like a leg injury for Kings forward Kevin Fiala likely ends his Olympics. And at this point, you just certainly hope that his NHL season isn't over. But that was a very, very tough looking injury as the Swiss forward got tangled up with Kevin Fiala, or with Tom Wilson, that is, with just a couple of minutes remaining in that hockey game, and he went down and was in immediate pain. So they stretchered him off the ice, and yeah, certainly hoping our best for Kevin Fiala. Again, felt like it was appropriate to start the show there because, I mean, hey, that's the risk of these players going and competing as hard as they do at the Winter Games here, is that injuries will happen. It's hockey, and it's hockey being played at a very fast, high, intense level, and that is exactly what we got today between Canada and Switzerland. Early on in this game, I think the first few minutes can probably best be described as chaotic. Canada had thought that they'd scored on a very innocent looking shot from basically the top of the offensive zone. It somehow fooled Akira Schmid, who made a couple of really nice saves in this hockey game. But in those first few minutes, if you're a Swiss hockey fan, you were holding your breath with how Schmid was looking. It goes back the other way, and it was kind of in that awkward moment where the announcers, Chris Cuthbert and Mike Johnson, and obviously everybody watching at home, were kind of doing the whole, like, are we getting a buzzer here at some point? Like, did that puck go in? And then the play goes back the other way. Switzerland damn near scores. Logan Thompson makes a very, very big save off a 3-on-1 and an opportunity that I'm sure Timo Meier would like a do-over on. He probably could have just taken one more stride over to the left and had a wide open net. But they started to find their gear a little bit. That top line with Connor McDavid, Tom Wilson, and Macklin Celebrini, at least it was the top line at that moment. That, of course, will be a big part of our conversation here throughout the show. They put up a lot of significant zone pressure early on in that game. Eventually, Canada gets a power play, and when Canada is getting power plays right now, they are very rarely missing. Early on, McKinnon to McDavid, of course, the duo that scored the final goal of the win over Czechia. They connect for the first goal of the game on the power play here against Switzerland. A beautiful seam by Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid. I mean, what can you say about the kind of zone that Connor McDavid is in right now? He may be Canada's most, electric forechecker. He's been laying a couple of big hits throughout this tournament, and then he's in a shooting mood as well. And that's something that, going back to, his NHL games, like, you can tell early on when Connor McDavid is in a certain zone, and he was in that zone early on in that hockey game. He snipes one past Schmid. It's 1-0 Canada, almost 2-0 Canada on a Sidney Crosby breakaway. But like I said, Akira Schmid made some really, really nice saves to keep that game close for a little bit. Eventually, game becomes 2-0. It's Thomas Harley getting his name in the mix. That's someone I'm excited to talk with Dan Riccio about in a few minutes. Connor McDavid picking up his 5th point. So we were only 10 minutes and 54 seconds into the game. And not only was Canada up 2-0, but Connor McDavid had already grabbed hold of the tournament scoring lead. He is he's on another level. He's in a different zone, whatever kind of line, phrase, cliche you want to throw out there. Connor McDavid is showing the world at the Winter Games that he is the best player in the sport. And listen, he wasn't done there. Team Canada wasn't done there, but I was pretty impressed with the effort that Switzerland put forth early in that hockey game. Talking to Stephen Ellis, our Daily Faceoff prospect analyst, and a guy who watches more international hockey than I would say anybody in the hockey media scene, he said that Switzerland was his pick to be a sneaky bronze medal contender this year, and he actually had them as a better overall group than the Czech team that Canada beat 5-0 the day before. And I think we kind of saw some flashes of that early. This is not a Swiss team that was going out there and just saying, hey, we're going to try win this game 2-1, 1-0. We're going to hope Akira Schmid can make 40 saves and we get a couple of bounces. Like, they were legitimately out there pushing the pace in this hockey game. In less than 90 seconds, or just over 90 seconds after Canada took a 2-0 lead, Pia Suter found the back of the net with a power play goal. It was right after, actually, Canada made it 2-0 that Bo Horvat took that penalty. So again, the first period was pretty back and forth in this one. And I guess in a way, similar to the Czechia game, you walked out of that opening frame, especially after Switzerland had obviously scored, and you kind of went like, okay, that was good for Canada. They have a lead, but there were definitely a couple of bounces in that opening frame and a couple of moments where Logan Thompson made some nice saves. But like, similar to, again, Czechia, they scored with 5 seconds left in the first period, and it was a little bit like, all right, they very easily could have been tied or even down one after that first period against the Czechs. And against Switzerland, you kind of came out going, all right, you felt real good at 2-0. And then Switzerland scores that goal. And all of a sudden you look back at like, okay, a missed 3-on-1, another couple opportunities off the rush, a few moments when Logan Thompson was looking uncomfortable in the crease, very similar to the way Schmid did earlier on in the first period. And it was like, oh damn, like this very easily could have been a 2-2 game coming out of the period, or tied in whatever fashion you want to say it could have been tied in. But regardless, Canada had the lead through 20 minutes, and then from there it was pretty much, pedal to the floor. They make it 3-1 in the second period, and that is when, of course, off the PK, we saw John Cooper load up McDavid, McKinnon, and Celebrini, and basically every time that line was on the ice, they were doing something special. Sidney Crosby gets on the board, his first of the tournament. That third line, so weird calling Sidney Crosby a third, talking about Sidney Crosby being on a third line, but regardless, that third line with Crosby, Marner, and Stone, although maybe you call them the second line, I'm not going to get into that. He scores his first of the tournament. That line continues to be impressive. And then Nathan McKinnon put the nail in the coffin, his second of the tournament. Connor McDavid finishing off a 3-point night. Nate had 3 points as well. Macklin Celebrini has 2 points, and Canada walks out of the Milan Arena with a 5-1 victory. And with that, they officially clinch the top spot in their group. So they will be off to the quarterfinals. There will be no qualifying round game for Team Canada. And much like in 2014, they come out of this round robin or preliminary round in that top spot in their group. And with a win over France, which we all assume that they will get, it will be the second straight best on best Olympics where Canada goes undefeated through the preliminary round. So again, 12th straight best on best Olympic win for the Canadians. And that dates back quite some time. That goes all the way back to the preliminary round of the 2010 games out in Vancouver. And hey, speaking of Vancouver, that is where my friend Dan Riccio resides from Off the Roster. He joins me to help me break down this hockey game. Tweet, how lucky are we to get to watch Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon play together? A 97-29 connection that in Edmonton, I'm used to seeing those two numbers vibe together so well. And it's really also not surprising that Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon can make it work the way that they do.
It's not surprising at all, Tyler. I mean, at the same time, it's just like, okay, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's see what they can do. Last year at the Four Nations, it was all about getting the Nova Scotia boys together with Crosby and McKinnon. But this time around, John Cooper figures out something a little bit different, and it happened early in the game. I guess Tom Wilson asked to come off, wasn't feeling that great, and out goes McKinnon with that line, and then John Cooper goes back to it after one of the penalty kills, and they score immediately. That was the Celebrini goal. And they just kept riding it for the rest of the game. And why wouldn't you, with the way that they were playing? And, you think about it, and everything about this tournament is about setting yourself up to play the U.S. eventually, right? And setting yourself up to have the best line in the tournament, load up, at least give the U.S. something to maybe have nightmares about. I think it's maybe something we can look forward to an anticipated gold medal match against the U.S.
That's a really good point you bring up about trying to put yourself in a position to play the U.S. in the gold medal game. And one of the reasons why when we did our predictions at Daily Faceoff, I didn't have Canada and USA in the gold medal game is because I kind of went like, it just seems a little bit too obvious. And in these best on best tournaments, there's always someone or something that throws a wrench into your plans. I keep referencing back to 2010 and like going into that tournament, it was a lot of like, oh, you just wait. It's Canada, Russia for the gold. It's Canada, Russia for the gold. And then Canada kind of stumbles their way through the preliminary round. They have to play Russia in the quarterfinals. We all know the history behind that, but it's never as easy or as straightforward as you think it's going to be. Well, I mean, here we are. Canada in the top spot in their group. If they can have a good game against France, they're likely going to be that number one seed coming out of the round robin. And in a weird way, I think Canadian hockey fans are rooting for USA to be right behind them because you'd want USA to be that two seed. So you don't run into them in a weird quarterfinal or a weird semifinal or anything like that.
Yeah, nobody wants that. I mean, we want to see Canada US at some point, but preferably in the gold medal match. And the way that this tournament is unfortunately played out for the rest of the field, I'd say, is there's just too many injuries across the board, right? Like you saw Sweden today losing to Finland. Don't have Leo Carlson, probably missing William Carlson as well. So it's just, other teams have been hit by the injury bug a little bit harder than the US and Canada. And of course, even Finland missing Sasha Barkov. And so while those would be the teams that we would expect to be able to give Canada and the US a bigger fight, they're not at the best capability that they could be to be able to give them that fight. So and especially with this short sample size of the first few games, nothing has changed my mind that this is a two-horse race in these games.
So again, that's big picture stuff. We'll maybe get back to that at the end, but let's dig into a few different parts of this hockey game. And you mentioned it. What part of what made Canada so successful in this one was loading up that top line. And like, my God, every single time Connor McDavid, Macklin Celebrini, and Nathan McKinnon, the three Macs, if you want to call them that, every time they were on the ice, they were creating something. The combination of Celebrini's tenacious forecheck, that's something that was on display on that fifth goal. And Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon just really seemed to speak the same language out there. But where I'll turn this conversation now is, listen, I didn't love what we saw from the Suzuki, Wilson, and Hagel line. Again, that feels like a group that's maybe just missing a little bit, as much as I like Suzuki as a centerman and a great look at the line combinations, or at least what they were heading into this game over on dailyfaceoff.com. But I worry a little bit, or I think maybe John Cooper might not go to this to start the rest of the games in this
Mm-hmm.
tournament, but I think we'll see it at some point. Like, I think he will almost deploy it the same way you see Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl treated in Edmonton, where it's like, okay, they never start together, but it's the best curveball you can have as a coach is to have an ozone draw off an icing, come off a PK and say, I'm putting these guys together to try almost just spook and throw off the other team.
I think to this point, the only line that's been together for the entirety of the first two games is that Crosby, Marner, Stone line. So, and it's
Mhm.
been working. Marner's looked good. He's had a couple of otherworldly assists so far, and everything else I think is still a work in progress. You can go to, as some of my followers on Twitter have been calling it, the Big Mac line. I guess it could work um, with those three. You know that you can go back to it at any time now. You're not going to need it against France. It's something that if you're in trouble or coming out of any penalty kill, it's something you can go back to. I love that idea from John Cooper. It's not like a novel idea by any stretch of the imagination, but it's an easy win for a coach to be like, yeah, look at how great I am. Just throw the three best players, three best forwards together and see what they can do after a penalty kill. So, this is something, these line combos, you mentioned Suzuki, Hagel, and Wilson. I loved Wilson's game in the first one. He had the obvious like assist on the Harley goal, which ends up being the winner. But maybe that was the last, noticeably great play that Wilson made in the game. He had a really bad turnover in the neutral zone latest period. So there's some things there that you started to see the puck management with some of the players further back on the roster wasn't as crisp as you would like it to be, and something that some of the other higher end teams could capitalize on if Canada doesn't clean up those little parts of the game.
Yeah, and I even see a little bit of that over in our YouTube chat of like, the passing wasn't as crisp in this hockey game. And I get that. Canada's also not going to go out there and play a perfect hockey game. I always laugh at that saying of like, you want to go play a full 60. And we even saw it in this game. Like, yeah, there were 90-second, 2-minute stretches where it's like, oh damn, like Switzerland's really turning up the pressure a little bit here. And one of those countries that definitely doesn't come in with the expectations of, like you said, a Finland, a Sweden, teams that you think could legitimately push to find their way into that gold medal game. I was pretty impressed though with Switzerland. I thought they
Yeah.
played like a much more up tempo game than like you traditionally think Team Switzerland does in these events.
They didn't just clog up the neutral zone and try to shut it
Yeah.
down against Canada, which is maybe what we'd seen in the past, especially when they've given Canada fits. in the past. Everybody's been referencing the 2006 game, the 2-0 one. That 2006 roster was not great for Canada, but also still Martin Gerber had to make 49 saves in that one for Swiss to win it. So you just kind of see how far they've come, and they've got legit stars on this team with Hischier and obviously Yossi running the back end. Fiala was tough to see what happened with him at the end there, but this is a much better Swiss team. And I heard you just before you brought me on, like, yeah, that race for third place, could somebody sneak in there? And you look at this Swiss roster, and they've got the guys to be able to do it in short tournaments, especially when you get to the knockout rounds. It could just take one play from a star player, and who's going to count out guys like Yossi or Hischier in those kinds of moments?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. We get a comment here from at John Harbaugh season, so football fan chiming in. We need Wilson and Stone versus teams like Sweden and USA. And like maybe I'll agree with that a little bit, that you're going to want good forecheckers and things like that. And maybe we can park the Wilson part of this conversation. And I want to talk more about what I think has been the line it's the most pleasant surprise for me. Like, I really wasn't sure if the Sidney Crosby, Mark Stone, Mitch Marner trio would work. I didn't know if they quite had enough speed, but I will say the way the three of them, like we talk about McDavid and McKinnon kind of just speaking the same language and having, some amount of instant chemistry together. I think that third line with Canada, which maybe we're calling them the second line now, whatever. But Crosby, Stone, and Marner, they're not burners. They're not guys who are going out there like the other lines and laying big hits and getting on these big rushes. But like when they get moving in the offensive zone, that is a trio that is speaking the same language. They can keep cycles alive for long stretches. Like, I've been thoroughly impressed with that third line, and I think there is a reason, like you said, that's the one group John Cooper's not touching.
Yeah, you just can't touch it right now. They are the untouchable line. So leave them together. They're working. Stone and Marner obviously playing together in Vegas, and I think anything that Sidney Crosby ever does in the game of hockey is going to work somehow, some way. You're right about the speed thing. It's curious because you think it's going to be a factor with three players that aren't really known to be fleet of foot, especially Mark Stone and Crosby at this stage of his career. But I think on this smaller ice, maybe it's not as noticeable, right? And the other part of this is the IQ of these players is just off the charts, both defensively and offensively. And once they get it into the offensive zone, they can do some pretty incredible things, as we've seen in both games 1 and 2. And also, Stone and Marner playing big PK time for this team as well. So, you got to think about how you're going to look at that and utilize that, and also think about your time management, time on ice for each player as the tournament goes on.
Two things. Mark Stone got that breakaway from basically the red line in, and he
Yeah.
was huffing and puffing to get in there. I was watching the game upstairs, and my wife was next to me, and she looked at that. And this is better analysis than I can give. She said he skates like how I would imagine Waluigi would skate from the Mario universe. Like, he was very choppy. The arms were moving in a weird way. And you could tell by the time he got to like the hash marks, he's like, man, F it. I'm just throwing this thing on net. Like, get me out of here. But that third line's been good. And you brought up an interesting point about time management. And that, in a way, I think almost circles us back to that McDavid, McKinnon, Celebrini line. Like, I could see a world where, again, against France, you don't need them. Keep them to the side. Keep all four lines kind of moving and everybody in a rhythm. I think quarterfinals, early in the semifinals, like, again, you don't need them. You can pick and choose your spots. I'm so curious, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and start dreaming about a gold medal game that Canada's not in yet. But man, if you're John Cooper and you get to a gold medal game, how would you not be tempted to just have that Crosby line, have that McDavid, McKinnon, Celebrini line, and play them both like 26 minutes each in that hockey game? Because again, every time one of those two trios was on the ice, it felt like a power play.
They were insane, and the things that I think Celebrini is maybe the most sneaky impressive, because I know, like, we all know what McDavid and McKinnon can do, but like the way that Celebrini just immediately, fits in with those guys. And, the ultimate thing that I always come back to when you talk to enough players, it's like talent will figure it out. Talented players will figure out how to play with each other. But Celebrini at 19 years old just keeps impressing everybody. He had 1-1 again today. The way he just pops into the space there to score that goal, like, he reads the play so well, understands where the soft ice is going to open up, and has just freakishly good release. We aren't supposed to see players this good at 19 years old, and this guy just keeps breaking the glass ceiling. It's really impressive. Again, McDavid and McKinnon, we know they're the two best players in the league, and Celebrini is showing himself as a top 5 player in the league. What he's done in the NHL this year and how he's fit in on this roster.
Vaughton in the chat said McDavid's minutes have been low. They seem to be saving him for bigger moments down the road. And I think that is a very good observation. I think heading into the third period, he only played like 10 minutes. You can see here on your screen. Good work, Pat Puff behind the scenes, 16-13 time on ice for McDavid through 2 games. I mean, that's 8-9 minutes lower than he's used to playing in an NHL game. So that is a good point. K. Waddy on Celebrini says impressive motor on that kid. And yeah, I touched on it earlier, but that 5th goal, like I think a lot of players go for that first forecheck. I forget which Swiss defenseman he was chasing down, but he kind of whacked at him once. They made the play around boards, and instead of just kind of staying with that one guy or kind of looking and being like, I'm sure someone else, so he just kept moving,
Yeah.
forces the turnover. Bang, it's 5-1. Let's talk. Do you have anything else on that, or can we move to the negatives? There's a couple of things that I want to nitpick here.
I am surprised. It's a good point by the commenter there that Celebrini. The reason Tom Wilson was on that line with McDavid and Celebrini is like, oh, he's going to be F1. He's going to be the guy hard in on the forecheck and putting defenders through boards, winning pucks down low, and then letting the other guys do the work. But okay, now you put McKinnon there, and the dynamic has to change a little bit. And again, seamlessly, he understands the assignment. Okay, I'm F1. Let me go do my thing, and he can just play so many different roles, and that's why it's going to work if they go back to that later in the tournament.
Canada has outscored their 2 opponents 10-1 through 6 periods of hockey. Like I said earlier, they have won 12 straight best on best Olympic tournament games. And yet here we are. I'm going to sit here and find some ways to poke holes in it because that's what we do.
You're finding
I
negatives in two 5-goal performances. Okay,
I am.
I'm all ears, Tyler, because I haven't found too many yet.
Well, maybe you can talk me off the ledge a little bit here, but coming into the tournament, there was obviously a lot of scrutiny about the blue liners that they decided to bring here, running back the same group of 8. And then they also lose Josh Morrissey early on in that opener. And I kind of sit here and I had fears about this blue line being able to move the puck well enough from the get-go. You subtract Morrissey from this group, my concerns grow a little bit more. John Cooper leaned heavily on Theodore and Parayko, who both skate really, really well. Both had a couple of times today where they iced the puck. I think about in the third period. Again, game's out of reach. We're definitely nitpicking, not from a, oh, this could have cost them the game perspective, but more from a, okay, let's try to make sure the process is right here. There was kind of back-to-back draws where they snap them back, and the first one got iced. The second one got played around the wall before Connor McDavid can get there, which, again, if you're beating Connor McDavid to a spot, it's because you're doing something wrong. It's not like Connor McDavid wasn't getting there quick enough. So Theodore and Parayko had moments where they struggled. Going back to yesterday, Devon Taves had some moments where he struggled to keep pucks in at the blue line, where he was struggling to get to the center line to get pucks deep. And even then, you're just throwing him into the corner and losing possession. I'm a touch nervous about this blue line and their ability to move the puck, especially once we get into games against teams who are going to be able to throw 12 NHL, not just NHL caliber players, which the first 2 opponents haven't, 12 NHL star level players at you.
Yeah, and I can see your concern there. I think it really, to me, it might only apply to the U.S. In this tournament, but we'll see where it ends up. I know, like, yeah, there was some moments. Taves was not the cleanest with the puck, and there's certainly moments where Sanheim is a little bit curious with his decision making on the ice. Doughty has not had a good year. Doughty is. I mean, at his age, he's still very good at hockey, but for this level, he's kind of a vibes guy, and that's the reason, and one of the biggest reasons he is on this squad. You could have gone with a Bouchard, you could have gone with a Schaefer, and nobody would have batted an eye. And I certainly, now that the Morrissey injury, has caused an interesting sort of wrinkle to the Canadian roster, it brings up like, why didn't they bring an injury replacement option, especially for the back end? Now, if Morrissey's out for the rest of the tournament, you can't replace him. So that's going to potentially be a storyline as we go on. But what's sort of mitigated this for me, Tyler, is the play of Thomas Harley. And, After Morrissey went out yesterday, he played a ton against Czechia, played really well, and then today follows it up with a goal. And this was a guy who maybe heard the critiques coming into this event, with Schaefer playing so well. Everybody wanted the 18-year-old to be on the roster. And hey, Harley's not having a great year in Dallas. How is he on this team? Is he just there because he was on it last year and stepped in beautifully for this roster? Last year's not this year. I think he's heard all of those critiques, because for me, maybe outside of Makar, but you could have the argument, him or Makar, they've been the two best defensemen in this tournament for Canada, and that's not really a debate. For me, Harley has been the big surprise for Canada through these first two games.
And so I think you're bang on with that. Yeah, I don't even think it's been close. I mean, Makar's miles ahead of everybody, and I think Harley's miles ahead of the guy who you could call their third best. And the fact that he excels moving his feet and moving the puck, it's so needed with this team. And you again kind of start to think, like, if he wasn't playing this well and he was not playing at this level earlier this year or throughout this season with the Dallas Stars, they'd be in a little bit of trouble. The Morrissey thing, another comment. Have we heard any update? Again, they're going to be tight-lipped about this stuff. They're not going to come out and say he's out for 3-4 days or he's playing in the quarters or anything like that. Well, it's a day-to-day basis with Josh Morrissey. There's a part of me that goes, okay, it was the second of back-to-backs. They clearly had some motives to get other players in. They do the Jarvis for Marchand swap, even something as simple as dressing Kemper instead of dressing Binnington. Did they want to get everybody a game? And did they look at Morrissey and go, all right, maybe you're only 90%. Maybe you could have played today if we really needed you, but hey, take the extra day. I think that's the optimistic view in all of this. But where I would go next is, and I don't know if the game against France is going to tell us a lot about this, but if Morrissey's ready to go, can they make the tough decision to pull out Drew Doughty, which is the decision I think that needs to be made? As much as Travis Sanheim, like you said, some curious moments. I'll value the PK work in the big body over what we've seen from Drew Doughty, which is just quite frankly not an Olympic level of hockey on Canada's blue line. So would they make the tough decision if Morrissey's healthy and put him in over Drew Doughty? And number two, I liked Seth Jarvis tonight, and I noticed Seth
Yeah.
Jarvis more than I noticed Brad Marchand a day ago. So would they make the tough decision and potentially keep both Brad Marchand and Drew Doughty? Both of them are vibes guys. Would they make the decision to keep them both out of the lineup?
That would be a bold call. And it's something that, John Cooper's got away, because obviously those guys are probably big parts of the team, big voices on the team. And that's the hard part about these decisions for John Cooper. Jarvis, I think his speed and how he could help on the penalty kill is something I would want on more of
Mhm.
on the roster. But I'm not sure you're taking Brad Marchand out of the bigger games. Like that's a big call if you're John Cooper, and it's one that you better be sure about making it, because not that these guys are going to lose buy-in, but you know Marchand is just, we know what kind of a character he is, and I think that's one you've got to be careful about if you are John Cooper in this tournament.
Looking ahead to the way things are playing, or looking at how things have played out, and now looking ahead, like, I don't want to come on here and be all hot takey and whatever, but it's not a question of whether or not Canada is going to finish this preliminary round undefeated. It's a question of what their, or how good their goal differential is going to be. And when you look back, like even in 2014, when that was maybe the most perfect hockey team ever constructed and ever put together, they still got pushed or at least scared in the preliminary round. They barely beat Norway 3-1. They had to go to overtime in the round robin to beat Finland. Back in 2010, again, I'll reference this again, they went 1-1-1 through the preliminary round.
Mhm.
Like, they faced adversity. They got scared. Is there any part of you that is maybe worried that they haven't had to go through that? And I know it's a weird thing to kind of have a conversation about, because it's like, no, you want them to look dominant, but there is a little part of me that's like, okay, are you going to run into, maybe it's Sweden in the semifinals or whoever it might be, and you're going to get down 1-2 nothing early, and it'll be like, oh shit, panic time. We've been sitting in cruise control for the bulk of this tournament.
It's you know what, it is an interesting thought. I mean, I don't think it's gonna really, we won't know until it happens, because there's a chance Sweden does score first, or Canada
Yeah.
doesn't have a lead in one of these games, and it's going to probably happen in the knockout round, and how do you respond to that, especially against a Finnish team that is going to and is so good at just locking it down if they do get a lead and keeping things on the perimeter, as that's what Finnish hockey is all about. They know how to play defense no matter what names are on the roster every single time out. So that would be something that, yeah, if I'm looking for things to be worried about, that's on the radar. But I just think Canada is too far ahead of everybody. Like, this roster is so good, so deep, even with some of the concerns. Like, again, the concerns I have are how does it look against the US more than anything else. For me, it's not as big a concern, because I think these players, a lot of them, whether it's together with Canada, sure, they haven't had so much adversity, but most of them have all had it at the NHL level in some way, shape, or fashion. So I think they'll handle that fine as the tournament goes on, knowing that, they are just that much more talented than pretty much everybody else.
And maybe this is another reason to kind of sit there and go, again, I nitpick this roster. It's what we do. It's what we do as a country, as media. But you sit there and go, maybe this is why you give them some stick taps for bringing back the same players, because this is a group that at least faced adversity 12 months ago in Boston and Montreal
Mm-hmm.
when they lost to the US in the round robin, when they went into that final game and were trailing in the hockey game. Quickly, John Cooper, Josh Morrissey will not play next game, but Canada's head coach was, quote, clear in saying, according to Pierre LeBrun, that Morrissey has not been ruled out for the tournament. So we may not have seen the end of Josh Morrissey, but if we do get another look at him in the red and white, it'll be in the elimination round or in the quarterfinals, which are about 4 or 5 days away, depending on when Canada will play. I think it's next Monday. Don't ask me to count days like that on the fly. I'm not good at that. I'm going to do a couple of, like, we'll call them rapid fire just because they're sort of yes or no questions, but we'll go in depth on these conversations. Logan Thompson was great. I mean, as expected, again, both him and Binnington passed their first test with flying colors. Will we see Logan Thompson again in this tournament, though, Dan?
No, we will not. I think it's Binnington's job for the remainder of the tournament. I know not everybody's going to want to hear that. Binnington was unbelievable in game one. Like, early on, he had to be good early against the Czechs, as Nathan McKinnon even admitted. They were a little bit nervous and jacked up for that first game. And who wouldn't be for a lot of these guys, their first Olympics. And Binnington was stood to the task. Thompson, similarly, today, when he was called upon to make big saves, he was able to make it. I think there's two things that obviously stand out. Whatever we think of Jordan Binnington and where his game has been at the NHL level, it's hard to deny that it's been anywhere close to the level of what we are used to as a Team Canada goalie. But John Cooper loves him. The team loves him. Seems to be a well-liked guy around the room. And I think his separating factor is his ability to handle the puck. And when you get against the better teams, that's going to show. Even yesterday against the Czechs, the first goal that was waved off, it starts with Jordan Binnington being able to handle the puck. And I think that's a big factor for Canada moving forward in this tournament. You think about, the Marty Turcos and Martin Brodeurs and how well they handled the puck in the past for Canadian goalies. And I think that's something that separates Jordan Binnington from the other netminders on this squad.
Yeah, like, I'm with you 100% yes. Ask 100% yes. I asked Carter Hutton earlier today. He said 100% yes. And I was trying to, like, map out, because let's play devil's advocate. Can I map out a way for Logan Thompson to get another start? And it's like, okay, let's say quarterfinals, they're playing whoever, and they win the game 6-5, and Binnington gives up two stinkers. Even then, I think what you
No.
said, where John Cooper loves him, I think they're going to sit there and say, we're giving him a chance to bounce back. We bailed him out. We know he'll get us next time.
Well, that happened at the Four Nations, right? Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't good early in the tournament, and then in the gold medal game, whatever the final, he was he was maybe Canada's best player. So that's he's just got that cachet and the reputation of being a big game player. And until he does something to change our minds on that, or change his coach's mind on that, he is going to be the number one goalie for Team Canada.
The record for points in one Olympics belongs to Saku Koivu and Teemu Selanne. This is Olympics with NHL player participation, I might add. Koivu and Selanne in '06 had 11 points each. Connor McDavid, through 6 periods, has 6 points. And, okay, one more game coming against France, where I'm sure he won't be held totally off the score sheet. And then quarterfinal, semifinal, potentially a gold medal game, potentially 4 more games for Connor McDavid, who's got 3 points per game so far. Do you think he'll get to 11, Dan?
He might get to 11 in the game against France. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens against the French team. That one could be a bloodbath for the Bleu Blanc et Rouge. Uh, I think it's a really good chance that he ends up with more than 11. Once we get to the knockout rounds, it might get a little dicey. I'll say if he gets another 3 points against France, he ends up with the overall Olympic record. And it just everything about this tournament from McDavid's perspective, and the whole Players Tribune piece that came out right before the tournament began, and how he's played through these first two games, shot out of a cannon, man on a mission, whatever you want to call it. I know McDavid is brilliant every time he takes the ice, but somehow it feels like he's found another level in these two games. And maybe it's not the best to judge him on, given the opponents are nowhere near what Canada looks like. But he feels like he understands the assignment, and he knows that this gold medal will be tied to his legacy as a hockey player and was one of the greats of the game. And he seems to understand that, and is making sure that his game is at its peak right now for Canada.
Yeah, and he's not really, and again, I watched Connor McDavid 82 games of every season. He's a guy who during the regular season will sit there and maybe get a little bit bored at times, or maybe recognize that he shouldn't celebrate a goal against an opponent in the middle of November. He's not doing any of that. Like, he scored the first one. He looked right at Nathan McKinnon and gave him a big old F yeah. Like, he's
Yeah.
dialed in the whole way, even going into the third period. They're up 4-1. There was no like, all right, I'm going to take my foot off the gas and show a little sportsmanship here. I don't want to make it look like we're running up the score. Like, he stays physical. He made that move to the net on the fifth goal, where the McKinnon picked up the rebound. Like, I think you're right. We might get him tomorrow again, or on Sunday against France, and he might just put up 4 more points, and then we're really talking about him not just tying the record, but setting it. But he's been unbelievable. The physicality from McDavid was unbelievable once again
And
in
when have
this
we
game.
seen
And
McDavid throw those kinds of hits? Like, he
honestly, like,
absolutely trucked that guy today.
yeah, like, there's a couple of moments I can think of from his Oilers career, but again, like, he's played however many games in the NHL. I've probably watched 95% of them. I can legitimately think of like two, maybe three moments where he's been this engaged physically in a hockey game. Like, usually I think part of it is, like, again, in Edmonton, he owns and wears like having to produce offensively, so he's not doing a lot of that. It's a totally different mindset for him, wearing his country on his chest. So he was great. One thing that I did think was odd, and this was like a bigger story coming into the tournament, and this even ties into Tom Wilson a little bit, but everyone was like, oh, international hockey, like, hey, oh, it gets officiated very. Man, the officiating was terrible today. They were letting them do whatever the hell they wanted the entire game. And that's not me being like Canada should have had more power plays. Like, hey, listen, I don't condone throwing beers at Mike Johnson or throwing beers on the ice, but like, goddamn, I could understand why those Swiss fans were pissed off. They were letting a lot go today.
Yeah, they were on both sides. They were letting a lot
Yeah.
go, and I don't know what it is. I know that the rhetoric coming into the tournament, or the narrative, was that they were going to call it more like an NHL style game. So, I guess they've just decided headshots are okay, because even watching some of the other games, which is, George Peros thinks headshots are okay a lot of the time. But it's been a little bit strange, because I have expected there to be a tougher whistle, but
Yeah.
it's been a light whistle through the first handful of games, no matter who's playing. And that's been a strange part of it. I do even feel like Wilson has definitely tried to toe the company line. He's stayed away from extra contact through these first two games when he's even had the chance to make it. He's seemingly not getting goaded into any of the extracurriculars post whistle, knowing he's got the reputation and maybe the target on his back. And Sam Bennett, I know he had the opportunity to just obliterate Nico Hischier today, and he stepped out of that hit. Like, you can't tell me he didn't step out of that. He ends up high sticking him and didn't get a penalty for it, but he stepped out of that hit. he had Nico Heischer in the in the sights and was ready to just absolutely obliterate him through the trolley tracks of the neutral zone. And he stepped out of that hit, ends up high sticking him, and those are plays that guys like Sam Bennett and Tom Wilson usually make in the NHL, and they've clearly understood the memo from their coaching staff that we got to stay away from stuff like that.
Even Wilson in that maybe it was second period, third period, whenever. Oh no, it's third period. He was getting mugged in front of his own net. Helmet ripped off, everything. They're up 4-5-1 at that point. Like, make no mistake, if that is an NHL game and he's wearing a Washington Capitals sweater, Tom Wilson is going to do something very aggressive and probably
Yeah,
very stupid in that moment to kind of like stick up for himself. But even then, like, he just kind of got up, looked around, and was like, all right, I'm going to the bench. Like, you're right in the towing the company line. Like, I think they know that, especially with the, again, you mentioned George Peros, but let's talk about the not just the officiating, but everything else. Like, if he does something dumb, I think he knows, like, man, they could sit me for 2 games here. Like, I can't take any sort of a
yeah,
chance. So he's walked that line, and maybe some people, and I know earlier in the YouTube chat they were saying he's been or ineffective. I think he's been fine. Again, my expectation is he's back on the top line on Sunday, and they kind of park the whole Big Mac, 3 Mac, whatever we're calling it, line. But yeah, he's been fine. There hasn't been anyone that, like, again, I know I bitched about the blue line for 5 minutes, but like, that's because it's all I could bitch about. There's been nothing else to like
yeah.
really be upset about. They've outscored the other team 10-1.
Yeah, there's not a lot to be super negative about, and that's what you wanted to see for these first two games. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get the legs ready and get some of that chemistry going, but I think they have a lot of that carrying over from the Four Nations. I am somewhat curious about, and it's not really because of what happened in today's game or in the first game, but I am curious about how the penalty kill looks moving forward. And I'm again thinking about a single game elimination and how one power play goal against can maybe decide a game, especially against the Americans, or if you go up against the Swedes or somebody like that in a semifinal. And when you lose Sorelli, you lose.
Mhm.
And I know people didn't want Sorelli really on the team, but the reason Sorelli was on the team, John Cooper loves him. So again, that's part of the factor. But he's also still like one of the best penalty killers in the league, no matter what his stats say on the box sheet, on the box score. And when you look at it on the NHL.com league leaders, he's not going to be anywhere close to the top, but he's one of the best penalty killers in the National Hockey League and can be a very good defensive 5-on-5 forward as well. So he's not just a penalty kill specialist. Losing him, and now Bo Horvat is thrust into a top unit penalty kill role. Like, to me, that's not Bo Horvat's strength as a player. I watched him a ton with the Canucks, and even with the New York Islanders, he doesn't play a big PK role because it hasn't been a strength of his game through his career. So that's something I wonder about. I know he was in the box for the power play goal against today, so he didn't really factor. But that second power play the Swiss had, he was basically hemmed in for almost the full 2 minutes. It's something I'm curious about thinking ahead to the single game elimination playoffs where one power play can ultimately decide the game.
Well, and this is something I've wondered about a couple of teams in the tournament. Like, I was laughing if when Germany makes it to a quarterfinal game or whatever, is Mo Sider just going to play like 36 minutes in one of these games and just be out there? But I'm curious, like, again,
Yeah,
how much will John Cooper, who has a team full of star and superstar players at his disposal, when it gets to quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, gold medal game, whatever, when it gets to that point, how short is the bench going to get? Like, even today, Seth Jarvis played 9 minutes, at the lowest amongst forwards. Like, are we going to see something towards the end? I know he was the 13th forward tonight, but like, are guys just going to be sitting a la Philip Forsberg? That's a whole nother conversation. That's insane. But are we going
yeah,
to get to penalty kills? And is Cooper at that point in the tournament going to say, okay, I can't trust Horvat, can't trust all these other guys? You know what? It's one game. Sidney Crosby, you're starting on the PK. Connor McDavid kills penalties pretty regularly for the Oilers. Throw Nate out there. Like, I wonder if he's just going to say, enough of this, 4 lines, guys have their roles. Like, when it's a gold medal game and that's on the line and it's not a best of 7, there's no room to kind of tinker and feel out your opponent. I'm very curious
yeah.
how short the bench gets in every scenario.
Yeah, it's true, right? And there's going to be moments where we just see Kale McCarr running hot for this team, and
Yeah.
he's going to end up in the 28 to 30 minute range, just like we would see Duncan Keith and and Drew Doughty do for Canada in some of those earlier tournaments. Maybe not so much in Sochi because they were just so freaking dominant. They didn't really they didn't really need to, but I could see that. And it's the PK thing is not just something I'm curious about for Canada. Looking at the U.S. side of things, like again the Canucks connection is valid here because I watched JT Miller be a not so great penalty killer for a lot of years with the Vancouver Canucks, and for him to be one of the main PKers for Team USA, like I get it makes sense because he's not really going to have a big role anywhere else on the roster. But again, it's not a strength of his game to be a top end penalty killer, and that's something that could come back to bite the U.S. Later in the tournament.
Dan Riccio off the roster on the Nation Network YouTube, talking all things, not just Toronto, but sports. What else at the Olympics has caught your attention so far? What have you guys been talking about, you, Cabby, and Lindsay on the show?
Well, we've been talking a lot about the hockey. Lindsay did a special with some of the speed skaters in Montreal before they went off to Milan, and so she had an interview with Courtney Soro that we aired today. She's a two-time medalist here at these games. That was pretty cool. And you know what? I gotta say, like, was it during the second intermission? I was watching the Ilya Malinin, American figure skater, go through his free skate, and this guy is like okay, he's the Wayne Gretzky of figure skaters, right? He hasn't lost an event since 2023, and he just choked everywhere. Like he was falling all over the ice. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I don't know anything about figure skating, and I am gripped to my television watching this guy choke away a gold medal. He ends up finishing 8th because he bombed it so bad, and that's like it's tough to watch, but also like a train crash. Like you can't look
Yeah.
away. It's just it was something else, and that's what the Olympics bring.
Yeah, Quad God is the nickname. I don't know if he gave himself that nickname because I think it's his Instagram handle or whatever. But yeah, Quad God coming, I think, last in the whole thing. I had my eyes on the curling. I don't know if you saw that. Maybe got more heated than any moment during the Team Canada hockey game. Shout out to Mark Kennedy, who's from the same the same small Alberta city that I am. Shout out to St. Albert. Mark Kennedy throwing F-bombs live on the broadcast
Yeah.
back and forth with Team Sweden. So there's been no shortage of insane storylines. I mean, you can go to the funnier ones too, with the Norwegian biathlete, and everyone's heard all that stuff. The felon getting arrested at the Slovakia-Finland game, all of that. But this has been like, again, I haven't been in media for very many winter games, but like, man, from what I can remember, this is one of the most headline-filled games we've seen.
Yeah, the extra storylines have been plentiful, which is nice. With the Slovak and the Norwegian guy who just made a couple of really bad decisions in life, and one airing out his dirty laundry on Norwegian national television and then going viral across the world. So that's also great. But I was ready to see Brad Jacobs throw down. Like
Yeah.
he's got a couple of guns on him. I think the Canadian curlers against the Swedish curlers, that would be a pretty good fight. I know who I would
Oh,
take, but it would be a pretty good. It would be funny to see the curlers fight before the hockey players.
yeah, I was
That's
like Brad Gallant, Benny Hebert at the front of that rink. Like, no, those guys are jacked. Those Swedes do not know what they're getting into. All right, Dan, I enjoyed doing this with you. I'm sure we'll chat again throughout the games here, but thank you very much for popping on.
Thanks a lot, Tyler. Talk soon.
There you go, Dan Riccio off the roster. You can find him Nation Network, YouTube. We're going to do a couple more things here before we wrap up, but we'll let Dan go. Catching up on the YouTube chat. A couple of you still not feeling the love for Sam Bennett, even though he's Canadian. Bennett is such a clown. I think he's been fine. He's playing a lower role in the lineup. He's doing his thing. Ice time depends on score effects from Quaddy. Trailing, they go top heavy. Leading, roll them. Again, I think when it's the gold medal game, you can take all of that and just throw it out. If they're up 4-1 in a gold medal game, you think John Cooper is going to sit there going into the third period and be like, better give everybody a couple shifts here, make them all feel good? Like, there's no shot. It's going to be Sidney Crosby trying to win every single D zone draw. It's going to be Connor McDavid and Nate McKinnon in every O zone draw, even if they're up 8-1 in a gold medal game. That's maybe a little bit of hyperbole, but you get the point I'm saying. I'm fascinated to see it. I think there's going to be other countries who reach that sort of boiling or breaking point a lot earlier than Canada. And I mentioned the Mo Sider thing. Like, again, that guy is like far and away the best defenseman on that Germany team. It ain't close. When it comes time to whoever they're playing in whatever round it is, He's playing north of 30 minutes. Quick rip around the whole winter game scene, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Canada clinching Group A. It's a 5-1 win over Switzerland today. Switzerland, Czechia. They will play for the second spot in that group. Just looking at things. So the way things are going to work, the three group winners are all going to advance right to the quarterfinals. The highest seeded second place team from their group is going to get the 4 seed. Those 4 teams are off to the quarterfinals. The other 8 teams are all going to the qualifying round. So Canada, we're assuming USA, although they still have to play Germany and crazier things have happened, they're likely off. Switzerland and Czechia, I don't think either one of them is going to have a good enough goal differential to get that 4th seed. I would imagine it's going to go to, well, Finland still has to play Italy. Finland would be pretty motivated to blow them out in that instance. Italy's already 0-2. Like, in a weird way, it might be Finland. Slovakia needs a point against Sweden to clinch top spot in Group B. I suppose if Slovakia were to lose by a goal, maybe there's a world where they end up as the 4 seed. But the point I'm making is I think the 4 seed's likely going to come from somewhere in Group B, which means Canada will likely be the number 1 seed unless USA really blows the doors off of Denmark. But again, if USA couldn't blow out Latvia, are they going to be able to blow out both Denmark and Germany and get up to the level Canada's at? I'm not quite sure on that. I guess all of this in a way is saying that there is still a lot up for grabs as we head through the final 2 days of preliminary round play out in Milano Cortina. So still lots on the line, even if Canada's already clinched. You're hoping for them, if you're a Canadian fan, of course, to grab hold of that 1 seed because you're hoping USA grabs either the 2 or the 3 seed, and then you can just kind of, we're not touching USA. I mean, kind of in a weird way, I think hope Sweden grabs the 3 seed and just finds a way to crawl over Slovakia to finish this thing off. Because if you can get to a world where you're 1 seed Canada, USA 2 seed, Sweden 3 seed, you're sitting here and talking about, you're playing maybe Switzerland, maybe Czechia, maybe Slovakia, maybe Finland in the semifinals when you eventually get there. Like, your path does get a little bit easier. And I know Dan and I talked about, do you want to face adversity? Do you want a tougher test at some point? Again, easy to say when you're sitting in your basement in front of a camera, a lot more difficult to sit there and be like, yeah, we want a good test. Give us Finland in the semis just so we can feel like we're a bit more, battle hardened and all that going into the gold. Like, no, I don't think you want that at all. All right, we're going to wrap this thing up. MTK said Germany could end up being number 4. They could, if they were to maybe lose, if they blow out Latvia, lose by 1 to the Americans, or even just bring that game to overtime, then yes, you're right. But we actually haven't seen an overtime game yet at these winter games. So that, of course, could greatly throw off who's the 4 seed, is if Germany pushes USA to overtime, or if I suppose Slovakia pushes Sweden to overtime. That would have a big say in all of this as well. So yeah, plenty up for grabs. Connor McDavid, your leading scorer. Shout out to our friends at Bet365, by the way. Whatever the moment, whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. MVP odds not posted yet. Canada's minus, I think, 120 to win this whole tournament right now. They've really put their pedal to the floor right out of the gates here. I would imagine if they're minus 120 to win the tournament, Connor McDavid's probably, I'll say, plus 130 would be my guess if you want me to try guess the line. Probably plus 130 to win MVP, and he is probably minus 200 to lead this tournament in scoring. 6 points for Connor McDavid. Nathan McKinnon, Juraj Slafkovsky tied for second with 4 points apop. That is going to wrap up our Canada post-game show here on Daily Faceoff. If you're new to things, I am live with Daily Faceoff Live. Former NHLer Carter Hutton is my co-host. We go every single weekday at noon Eastern time. 30-minute show, take you around the entire world of hockey. And of course, when the NHL is back, we talk obviously a lot of NHL. Johnny Lazarus has our Team USA post-games covered. Tomorrow, though, I do think it is Sean DePaz from What Chaos. Either way, Team USA post-game tomorrow, Sunday. I'm right back here in this chair immediately following the Canada game, where Jeff Merrick will be my guest, and we'll break down whatever happens or whatever shakes down between Canada and France. So plenty of Olympic or Winter Games coverage coming your way over the next 48 hours. And then next week, quiet day Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, qualifying round, quarterfinals, leading into the Friday semis, leading into a Sunday gold medal game. And if the first 2 games have been any sort of an indication, Canada and Canadian fans have to feel pretty good about their chances of setting their alarms bright and early next Sunday and getting a chance to see their group go for gold. Enjoy the rest of the Olympics. Enjoy your weekends, everybody. Enjoy the games, and we will be back. I'll see you back on Sunday to recap Canada-France. Everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.